Hey guys, welcome back to News with Science, where we discuss comics, movies, games, and more. My name is Ronnie, and today I'm going to be reviewing Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now, there won't be any spoiler reviews, but I'm just going to talk about some of the things that kind of like bothered me, and then most of the things that I liked. Without trying to get into spoilers, I know it's going to be a little bit difficult, but I promise I will not spoil anything, so don't worry about it if you haven't seen the movie already. The movie is actually set to be released tomorrow, but I actually managed to get an early showing tonight, and I gotta say, if I had to keep it short and sweet and simple, the movie was a pretty good time. I had a good time with it. I think the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, really doesn't do it justice. I think it's a bit over-exaggerating. The 51% score that you see right now on Rotten Tomatoes is not doing the film any justice whatsoever. I think the critics are over-exaggerating, and I think there are actual critics out there, and I say that lightly, critics, they are actually hate criticizing or hate rating it, I guess I would like to call it that. The movie is nowhere near as bad as people are making it out to be, honestly. I think this movie is a fun time, and it's at a decent runtime too. It actually felt a little longer though, but it's actually clocking in at only 2 hours and 5 minutes. The actors reprise their roles, Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, Ant-Man, Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp returns, Michael Douglas as Hank Pym, and Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet. They all return as well. And then we got a newcomer here, Cassie, but she really was in the first Ant-Man movie. She's all grown up now, and she plays, I guess, a version of Stature or something. I don't remember exactly. They never gave her like an actual superhero name from what I can remember in the film. But, it's a fun time, and really at the core of it, it's really about Scott Lang wanting to protect his family from the likes of Kang in the quantum realm. The goal is basically they got into the quantum realm, and if you've seen the trailers already, it's all fair game because I'm not talking about any spoilers. They get sent to the quantum realm by somebody, they get dragged in, and their goal is to ultimately get out before Kang finds them. And this is very apparent in Janet Van Dyne's character, Michelle Pfeiffer's character Janet, who really is scared to go back because there might have been some history there, and it's bad history, and we thankfully get to see that in a from a flashback scene in the film, so no surprise there really, but it's in the trailers regardless, so I'm not spoiling anything for you. Now, what I gotta say is that even though the movie is a good time, at least in my opinion, that that goes without saying that this movie does have problems, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't have any faults. It does have problems, in particular with my personal problems with the film is, one, there is a specific character, the one with little legs and little arms, MODOK. So the CGI is a bit iffy. It's not consistent. For the most part, it does look great, but the very beginning, it's kind of off-putting because you can tell that it's very green screenish, especially at the very beginning of the film. And then with MODOK, it's just so bizarre and very off-putting when we first see him. First off, as you could probably imagine, and because this is a 2-hour film, there's not a lot of time to develop a character as such as MODOK, who has so much history in the comic books. But let's just say his entire origins completely changed, and Marvel pulled a fast one where they took a character who has so much lore and so much depth in the comics, and they basically put a stand-in for it to be that character that we knew from the comics. And they kind of treated it like a throwaway. MODOK was really cool and all, but I just didn't like who he was before, and I thought he was ridiculous in the first film. I mean, kind of a dead giveaway, but that's also, kind of, you figure it out in the credits, thanks to the credits, but I'm not going to say anything else more than that. But MODOK was such a throwaway character in the film, and I hate when Marvel Studios takes well-known characters and kind of treats them like garbage or gives them a half-assed version of their original selves from the comics and puts it in the film. I mean, if this is not familiar to you, they've done this with Taskmaster, and I'm not going to get into that at all with this one, but I just don't like what they did with MODOK so much. It's not because he looks so silly, which he did. He looks really silly. The CGI in the head, whoever was in charge of designing his look, should be probably fired, or they should have hired another CG effects worker to work on MODOK, because he looked not good. He looked horrible in that film. But moving on, Besides that, the rest of the CG work throughout the movie was fantastic, especially this one sequence where like there's so many of Scott Lang's Ant-Man's running around, and you've seen that in the trailer as well. That was a really good CGI sequence as well. But for the most part, I mean, at the very beginning, the CGI was like a little weird, a little wonky, but then throughout the whole film, it was really good and actually quite impressive and top-notch in my opinion. Now, the major highlight of the film is Jonathan Majors' Kang, the Conqueror. He is someone not to be trifling with. He shows that he's very intimidating. All of the best scenes are arguably better, like, with him in the scenes. Like, whenever Kang's on screen, he means real business, and it's really good. Now, another thing that I want to mention is that one thing I was afraid of going into this film was like the humor. Marvel Studios is well known for doing a lot of humor, and the humor can be quite overbearing at times. But this time, they used humor when it was appropriate, and what I mean by that is that they didn't take advantage of the fact that like Ant-Man is not really a popular character. He's more of a C character. So they figured like let's insert so much comedy here and there, and let's just go crazy. No, they didn't crank it up to 11. Humor was only used when necessary, which I can definitely appreciate and get behind. And Scott Lang managed to have some serious scenes in this movie whenever things got real serious. I'm not gonna get into spoilers, but the humor was balanced perfectly, and I'm glad they executed that really well, at least in my opinion, the way I saw it. So if you're worried about the humor being overbearing in this movie, you're not going to get that. Humor is used appropriately, and then when it's time to get serious, that's also done really well in this film. And it took me by surprise. Unlike Thor Love and Thunder, which really sucked because of the overwhelming amount of unnecessary humor in that film, completely destroyed that movie. That movie sucked. It really did. But Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania succeeds in that. And another issue that I had, even though, like, as you could probably imagine, like, there are points, like, there is a major point where, like, the characters do go into the quantum realm. They separate. I feel like we don't get enough screen time with a particular character. I'm not going to say who it is, but you could probably figure that out for yourself as well. When you see this movie, you're probably going to know who I'm talking about. But, I'm going to give you a hint. The character's name is in the title. And I thought that was kind of bizarre. I'm like, we didn't get to see much of this character throughout the movie, at least do a lot of things. Like, I kind of figured this character was was benched for the most part, which was, like, odd to me. But aside from that, the movie's a good time. Everybody played their parts really well, especially Jonathan Majors, which was a real standout in this film. And I had a really good time. I don't think the 51% on the Rotten Tomatoes score is justifiable. I don't think it makes any sense. This is just one of those cases where, like, a movie that has a bad rating, but when you watch it, it's like, why is it rated so poorly when it's nowhere near as bad as people are making it out to be? If I had to give it a decent, like, a fair score, and this is going to be a really weird score, I'm going to give it, like, a solid, respectable 7.8 out of 10. Because of those critiques that I had about this film, I feel like that score is best suited for it. I mean, also, the fact that this movie, I felt like when I was done watching it, I felt like it wasn't really necessary in the Phase 5, even though you can consider this movie the first movie to officially kick off Phase 5. I felt like once the entire event of this film, like, played out, it made me wonder, like, how does this affect the overall MCU plot line, like, moving forward? Everything that happened didn't really do anything, and I feel like it didn't really matter for the most part. That's where I'm confused. So if you want to educate me on that without any spoilers in the comment section, please feel free to do so. But aside from that, the action is kind of like top notch, so it's really fast paced. At the very first, I guess, quarter of the film, it is a little slow, but it really picks up, and when the action hits, it's really good. So I had a good time overall. 7.8 out of 10 is a very, very fair score. Go see the movie. Do not let any of the critiques or the negative reviews or the bad score on Rotten Tomatoes influence your decision on seeing this movie, because it is nowhere near that bad at all. Like, I think people are over-exaggerating on this one, and I had a great time with the movie. Anyways, guys, that's my review for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click on the bell notifications so you don't miss anything. And as always, I will see you all in the next comic panel.